Hello and welcome back to the SAIPAR Podcast. My name is Mukosha and I'll be your host. I'm so excited because we have a very distinguished legal practitioner, an author, a civil society leader, and pretty much she needs very little introduction. And personally, she's been an inspiration to me. And we'll be discussing a discussion paper that she just recently co-authored with our director for research, Maya. And the discussion paper is called On the Rise, Women Lawyers in Zambia. Her name is Linda Kasonde, and welcome to our episode today. We are so honored to have you.
Thank you, Mukosha. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yes, so you just recently co-authored a paper which really highlights some of the challenges that women are facing in the legal profession, but also some of the progress that has been recorded. Could you just tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, so to my knowledge, and I've been in practice for the last 25 years, I have never come across a study of women lawyers in Zambia in terms of how they're advancing in the profession, what opportunities, disadvantages, and challenges there are for legal practitioners, female legal practitioners in various fields. So we interviewed not only practitioners at the bar in terms of in law firms, but also people in corporate. We had a few judges, some people in civil society, and also in large corporations. And approximately 85% of the respondents were women, and we had about 15% who were men. We're very happy to have those men to give their perspective as well.
And you've mentioned 85% being women. 15%, it's a bit low on the men's side. I know you said you were happy to have them, but what do you think it could take to have more men speaking out on these issues?
Unfortunately, the way we are socialized in society, as soon as most men hear anything that it's women something, they tune out because they assume it's not for them or it doesn't concern them. So it is a bit of a challenge to get more men on board. But also, this survey was released onto the LAS mailing list. So those who responded were those who volunteered themselves. We didn't sort of approach people directly. So in that regard, that's why I'm saying I'm very happy to have men at all, actually.
Okay, that's encouraging actually. And one of the striking findings from this paper is that women are increasingly entering the legal profession and becoming more visible. However, they remain underrepresented at some of the highest levels of recognition and leadership. What do you think explains this gap between entry and advancement in the profession?
So it's not a uniform. We haven't noticed that women don't advance in every sphere of the legal profession. So, for example, we have, according to a 2019 paper by the current Chief Justice, about I think about 40 or 50% of judges in Zambia are women. And so in that sphere, we're doing extremely well. We've had a previous acting Chief Justice who was a woman in Justice Lombe Chivesakunda, and we've had a substantive Chief Justice in Justice Irene Mambilima. So we're doing well in the judiciary. We have a president of the Constitutional Court who is currently there, who's also a woman. So we're doing quite well there. The challenge is at the bar, because even in large corporations, predominantly, I would say, most legal counsel in large corporations are women, I would say, anecdotally, although we didn't have a specific statistic on that. So it's the problem is at the bar, particularly in the litigation sphere, which is seen to be the domain of men. And in fact, we had specific respondents tell us that a male lecturer had told them that litigation is not for women because once they start having children, they're unable to perform properly in that sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the respondents also mentioned, and I think it's true, that the perception of women is what hinders us in progressing in our profession. The perception that we're not as capable, perhaps not as aggressive, perhaps not even as intelligent as men,
Mm-hmm.
hinders whether women can progress. And the starkest um, revelation on that was around the small number of women who have attained the rank and dignity of state counsel, which is the highest honor for a lawyer at the bar. So at the moment, there are only two practicing lawyers who are female state counsel at the moment. The others are either deceased or on the bench.
Mm.
So that is a terrible thing to witness.
I was just saying, just to put it into perspective, what's the comparison between the two female and then the male state council?
I actually don't have the figures
Mm-hmm.
for the total number of state council, but I would say they're probably around 40
Wow.
being state council, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, and that includes people who've previously been attorneys general, people who've
Mm-hmm.
previously been solicitor generals, DPPs, and just ordinary lawyers who attain the rank and dignity of state counsel. It's a very tiny fraction.
Yeah. It's a huge gap here. And also, you spoke about having a female who has acted as Attorney General. Are there others who have maybe also served as Solicitor General? And what does it look like in those offices?
It's never been a female attorney general. We've only had a female solicitor general,
Not even in an acting capacity?
not even in an acting capacity, to my knowledge. Perhaps
Okay.
is a substantive DPP who was a woman, but not attorney general. We've never had one.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, I believe Justice Lombard Chivisakunda was at a very distinguished career at the bar and also at the bench. Also, was the first woman to be qualified as an advocate in Zambia, as well as a solicitor general.
Oh, wow. That's very inspiring. And so, when it comes to this criteria for the professional recognition, including for the same what we've been speaking about, the rank of state counsel, do you think it adequately captures the ways that women contribute in the legal profession?
As I mentioned, and as the study bore out, I think it was around 74% of the respondents said that how women are perceived affects how they progress in the profession. And that said earlier, that's nowhere is it as clear as it is amongst uh, the college who have been appointed state counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because of, well, a couple of reasons. It is assumed that you have to be aggressive to be a good litigator, which is not necessarily the case. Um, and because of the way women are socialized, they often are not socialized to be assertive, which you do have to be a litigator.
Mm-hmm.
And so these things affect how you're perceived as a litigator. But I think many women have been arguing for several years that it's not just being a litigator that should qualify you for being state counsel. It should be things like distinction in academia. It should be things like leadership qualities or how you have maybe participated in the affairs of the Law Association of Zambia. So there are various other aspects that can be considered aside from just being a litigator. But I think this is one area of the law that people have been very resistant to change. And to some extent, I believe that is because of gatekeeping by those who currently occupy the rank and status of state counsel.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, and I'd like to say that I've been watching some of the work you've been doing. I mean, from your books, the podcast, and I've watched quite a lot of women that you have brought on that platform just to showcase that women are also doing amazing things out there. So, if you, yeah, some of us are inspired by that. And how can laws normalize women's leadership, not just by celebrating exceptional women, but by building systems that make women's leadership ordinary and expected?
One of my greatest regrets from my time as president of the Law Association is our failure to put in place um, a gender equality policy that seeks to, if you like, um, improve the equality between male and female lawyers at the bar. And in our recommendations, in our reports, that's
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Marja Hinfelaar and my paper on the women on the rise in the legal profession in Zambia. One of the things we recommended was for LAS to introduce some kind of a gender affirming policy. And also, because once you normalize having women in all spheres, whether it's on the bench, whether it's at the bar, whether it's a state council, whether it's in corporations, once you normalize having women uh, on an equal footing with men in all spheres,
Mm-hmm.
then you solve half the problem because it no longer looks like an anomaly. And women are no longer perceived as being less than men.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the the other recommendation was to have more recognition of women performing other roles, such as mentoring those in the profession, or you know, also just supporting women's roles at home specifically. And this is something for the law firm specifically, because often the women have to work very long hours in law firms. And that's seen as a disadvantage, particularly as many women mentioned, if you don't have a supportive partner at home
Mm-hmm.
who maybe not suspect you of doing anything untoward if you're working late hours, or will not help you bear the burden of childcare or caring for other members of the family. These are things that policies that can be introduced in law firms themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought this up because as women generally, we can't run away from the caregiving responsibilities that we have. And how do you think that maybe institutions beyond what we've talked about, but also institutions and even maybe government, how do you think they can sort of support women to be able to take on certain roles but not be looked at as less committed because they can't put in some of the long hours that the men can?
Well, one of the reasons why we see a lot of women leave law firms is because of that lack of flexibility. And I think when COVID came, it introduced this online video conferencing that allowed women to balance things a bit better. And a lot of the respondents in our survey said
Mhm,
that the Zoom calls and working from home really helped them balance their roles a lot more. And so now there's no reason why you can't be more flexible because people can work from anywhere. The other thing I would say is corporates appear to be a more conducive environment for a lot of women because one of the one of the key attributes of what's seen to be a rainmaker in a law firm, that's a person who brings in a lot of client and a lot of money, is your ability to network.
Mhm.
And again, women are disadvantaged because a lot of that networking happens after hours. It happens in bars and restaurants. Again, these are things disadvantage you in terms of childcare or just looking after a home.
Mhm.
Um, so the other thing that didn't come up in the study that is a fairly new phenomenon is the introduction of AI tools that could be
Mhm.
used by lawyers to make their work, if you like, faster and um, more flexible as well. It will reduce the number of hours that somebody has to stay in a law firm, for example, doing preparation for litigation, etc. So I would urge women, and anecdotally, globally, far less women than men currently use AI tools for their work. And so I would encourage women to embrace the technology because it will allow them to multitask in ways that previously others have not been able to do before.
That's very nice, and it's I think the most positive thoughts I have heard about AI, because sometimes when people talk about AI, we just hear the dangers, like, oh, it's here to take our jobs and whatever. But to think that it can help enhance how efficient we are, that's very interesting.
Absolutely. Not just to mention, because these are tools that are available globally, if you're not able to work more efficiently and faster, you will be left behind. So it's actually imperative on everybody to start using these tools to support their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now we can talk about another interesting thing that came out of the report, which some of the respondents spoke about sexual harassment and how it tends to be a hindrance when it comes to advancement in their careers. So, what should law firms, institutions, and even laws do to create a safer and more professional space for women?
Absolutely. And I think the statistics on the respondents who said that they had been affected by sexual harassment was well over 70%. And that I think it was around 28% said that it has a critical impact on their career. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something that is rampant in the profession and needs to be curbed. Now, I must give credit where credit is due. The Law Association of Zambia, the previous council, did put in place a sexual harassment policy for the profession. And the idea is that it should encourage women to come forward and report to the association when they are sexually harassed. But as
Mm-hmm.
we all know, we've seen it with rape cases, we've seen it with sexual assault cases outside of the legal profession, that when women do report these issues, often the blame turns on them as being at fault for having caused the situation that led to the sexual harassment or sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
So, at a societal level, we really need to deal with the core things that um, lead to sexual harassment. And I always say that women themselves have a very powerful role to play in this regard because we're the nurturers, we're the ones who tend to bear the larger burden of caring for children. And when you instill those values that women are not less than men, women are not to be trampled on in children, then hopefully they will grow up to embrace those values and beliefs.
When you said 70% of the respondents, I got chills. That's a lot. And I think just away from the legal profession, generally, I think sexual harassment is also something which tends to be hard to prove sometimes, and I can
Exactly.
only hmm I can only imagine what the women in the legal profession have to deal with.
Not only that,
Um,
not only is it something that is basically one's word against somebody else, but there's a power dynamic at play because often the people who are harassing you or assaulting you might be your principal in the office, your boss,
mhm,
or a CPA partner, or somebody who's supervising you. And so women tend to feel that they have little control over the situation. And subsequently, many probably just opt to leave rather than
mhm,
confront the issue.
yeah. Um, and then what role do you think that the men in the profession can do to also change the culture in the profession?
I'll point to my own experience. So, some, gosh, over 20 years ago, I
Mhm,
joined a law firm called Mulenga Mudashi and Associates, I think it was called at the time. And the two senior partners, Mr. Mudashi and Mr. Mulenga, both of whom are now deceased, um, were for me such a powerful example of male allyship,
mhm,
male support. They did never treated me any differently from my male colleagues, and in fact, they promoted me up until the point at which I became named partner. So
mhm,
I felt very supported by them in that environment because for them it was merit based. If you put in the work, you get rewarded. And I think that's the way to go. Let it be merit based. There's so many ways in which women can be productive. And the other thing I would say about having women is because they juggle so many roles, they're actually more adapted to being um, able to find ways and means of solving problems,
mhm,
other than perhaps something that a, a role that men would play, for example. They're more adapted to maybe finding quicker ways of doing things because they have other things to do. So this is the reason why women should be supported when they want to rise,
mhm,
because they are leaders in so many ways in society. And also, most of them, a lot of women are good at people management, mentoring. And these are things that the respondents said should be rewarded aside from just billing hours. They should also be recognized for the role they play in grooming younger lawyers, in
mhm,
providing mentorship, in people management within law firms. So these are things that can be looked at. And also, the same perhaps could be true of um, becoming state counsel,
mhm.
that there are many ways in which people show excellence in leadership at the bar and beyond.
That was a very nice experience for you, and I can imagine it also shaped how you moved forward in your career, becoming even the first LAS president. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And beyond mentorship, there's also the issue of finances, and women need sponsorship for further training and things like that. And how can women be supported in these issues of finances?
Okay, again, I will point to my personal experience at Mulenga Mundashi and Associates. So my bosses were very supportive of me in terms of pursuing further education. They gave me a sabbatical to go and do my master's. They paid for me to do a very expensive course in Spain under the IE University. They supported me when I wanted to go and attend the AGM. And throughout my career on the council of the Law Association of Zambia. So it's just support, but you also have to make sure that you are contributing towards the success of the law firm yourself, for you to earn the right to those things. And the other thing I would say to women is Yes, they did sponsor me to do various courses and things, but I also invested in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So while they gave me the time off to go and pursue my master's, I also paid towards my master's degree myself. I paid for the tuition, and they gave me upkeep. It was very nice of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to invest in yourself, even if others are not investing in you, because it's only to your own advantage and benefit.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Yeah. And so many women are now entering law school and the legal profession generally. What should they know about the profession that you wished you had known earlier?
Well, the one thing that has become increasingly common these days is that women are betting on themselves, in the sense that when I was entering the profession, there were very few female led law firms.
Mm-hmm.
So women are now finding that they're not seeing the flexibility. Maybe they're not progressing as fast as they wish to progress. They're setting up their own law firms and doing so successfully. And it's such a joy to see women really rising.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, as a former presidential candidate, the first female presidential candidate in the US
Mm-hmm.
once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your folding chair. And women are doing that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Talking to you when you speak about women rising, I literally see your face light up. It's so nice how you want to pull everyone along. Yeah. Um, and are you optimistic about the future of women lawyers in Zambia?
I am. There've very few barriers left to bring down. Of course, speaking from my own experience, I would like to see more women rise to the position of president of the association. We've only had one, and that's just not
Mhm,
good enough because we now are probably the majority in the legal profession.
mhm,
Um, Seeing more state counsel being women and being recognized as being deserving of the position because a lot of these positions are actually politically um, influenced, if
mhm,
you like.
mhm,
And it's not really about whether you're capable, whether you're competent, whether you're good at what you do. And sometimes that shouldn't be the case. We should appoint women on merit, and there's so many deserving women out there, and we should
mhm,
recognize them for it.
mhm. And finally, what do you hope that this report will achieve for law students, for young lawyers, for senior legal practitioners, for laws, the judiciary, and just everyone in general?
Well, as I mentioned towards the beginning, this is the first study of its kind. And I think it even says in the report that if you can't measure a problem, then you can't solve the challenges that are around it.
Mhm,
You need to name what the gaps are and where the challenges lie for you to be able to solve them and see the statistics to support. So it's evidence-based research that we've done, and like to see Dr. Hinfler and I, we'd like to see our recommendations being taken up, not just by the Law Association of Zambia, but further afield, because in fact, what is happening at LAS is just a microcosm of what is happening for women leaders on the broader stage, on the national stage, because
mhm.
women still are left behind, and no one should be left behind.
That's so profound. I don't know if there's anything else you would like to speak on, anything else which maybe I may have overlooked from the report.
I don't think so.
Thank you so much for being here. That was such an insightful conversation. I've learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure the viewers as well have learned quite a lot. So, thank you for taking time out of your day to discuss this report.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time. And I would just urge all the listeners and viewers out there, please do take some time to read the report, analyze it, and perhaps make suggestions to the Law Association of Zambia as to how the advancement of women in the profession can be improved. Thank you.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Um, Thank you so much for being here. As you have heard, the report is out now. You can find it on SAIPAR.org and read the full report, make recommendations as she has said. Thank you once again for watching and see you in the next one.